Here we go, mate. Game number one.
Indeed, indeed. And we are starting it off here on Data C. We're in the top right-hand corner of the map, spawning all the way in the top right-hand corner. We, of course, have a blue Terran player coming out from the land of Australia. He is going to be representing Mind Freak. He is Seither.
And spawning in the bottom left-hand corner of Data Under the Sea, we have the red Zerg player himself. It is RiSky.
Two players who, over the past couple of years, I think they both have a ton of DreamHack regional championships behind them. One of them is going to get knocked out in the group stage, which is absolutely insane to think about.
Yeah, like, they both kind of had their periods of dominance. I think everyone is well aware that Seither alongside Probe, they were the top two players in Australia for a very, very long time. I say Australia, really of Oceania. They would face off time and time again in the finals. I want to say, like, from 2016 to probably 2019 even. But after that, the region kind of opened up a little bit to rest of Asia, and then we had players like RiSky, T-Bull, Raza, Zane come in, and they had their own periods, right? RiSky, you know, he was, I believe, an Oceanic champion as well when he first popped up. A little bit less active nowadays, both players, we can say that about both of them. That's why they're here in the elimination match, but still very, very historic players that have their own legacies behind them.
And definitely do. I can tell you for a fact that while both of them are a little bit less active, Seither, at the very least, has been getting into the mind of his race by not playing StarCraft, but by playing shooters.
Yeah, it's a bit of a meme in the region that Seither's always playing either Tarkov or Dota or Rocket League. Nowadays, it was the Call of Duty free beta, or the beta weekend. He was all over that. And, you know, it just goes to show how dedicated he is to gaming, as I try to spin it in a positive way. But at the same time, like, it's always insane because for a long time, he hasn't really been known for, like, putting in a lot of practice, but, like, regardless, he's still an amazing player. Regardless, he's still very talented, and he can still, like, just pose, like, really, really impressive results.
Yeah, I still remember that one season of ANZ Champs where I think he won it all, and he said in the interview, yeah, I played StarCraft, like, at the start of this season, and then I just played Tarkov for the rest of it.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane how good he is, and we'll see if that can kind of push him through this game, as we have something pretty interesting here. We have a more economic opener coming out from Seither, going for that third CC before start play.
Yeah, we've seen Raza do this a lot yesterday as well. It seems to be making a little bit of a comeback after... It feels like in TVZ a lot of Terran players were playing a bit more aggressive in 2021, but it's glad to see that, at least for 2022, economic openings are making a bit of a comeback here.
Yeah, and it makes sense, especially on a map like Data C. We haven't really been able to talk much about said map, but it is one of the larger maps. It is very defensive as well because of all the choke points, because of all the ramps. So going into a longer macro game, something where he can just kind of slow the game down a little bit more. Not necessarily play mech, I don't mean that, but regardless, kind of cut the map in half. Maybe kind of the strategy or the approach that Seither wants to go with this.
I fear you may have just jinxed it over there by saying, you know, he doesn't need to play mech, but we all know Seither. He, much like Azur, much like HUD, are known for being able to just pull off either or in equal amounts of times in series.
You're not wrong, mate. You're not wrong. That's what's terrifying about him. And oh my god, he's already doing something a little bit different here. So far, he's just poking, prodding. It was a standard opener from RiSky. It was a hatch gas pool opener into his third hatchery. Everything's looking normal. But, and if you noticed, Seither actually started Marauder production.
And he is... Oh, let me just double check. Okay, he started concussive shells for a second, but
canceled.
Yeah, to cancel it right at the second. Stim, actually. Huh. So we have seen... Yeah, this is a variant of an opening we've seen a number of times lately in TVZ, where the Terran player will get concussive shells, and not too many Marauders, just a couple of them to try to slow down Queens as they move out. And then they get an armory and go into Hellbats from there. But Seither, delaying his concussive shells, he did still get one Marauder, which is interesting to say the least, but yeah, from here, it looks like he's going to a fairly standard bio game.
I'm almost completely convinced that Seither, he initially did want to go for a 3cc Hellbat push with Marauders, with Concussive Shell. It's a little bit more of a macro kind of Hellbat, the most macro-oriented Hellbat push that you can go for. But I think he was afraid that the Overlord saw the Marauder, and he didn't want to risk it, so he kind of switched gears and he changed his mind. I don't think the Overlord did actually see the Marauder, but I don't think he wants to, again, I don't think he wants to risk it.
Yeah, especially not against RiSky.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, RiSky is pretty well aware that Seither is just going to be poking and prodding a little bit with his Hellions. But aside from that, he is fully in control of the map. He is getting his 4th base, and he is just droning up as much as he can while he still can. He knows that, based on what he scouted early on, there should be a timing coming his way, but till then, it's a little bit of time to get ready.
Yeah, like RiSky's had a lot of freedom here. I mean, there is quite a large Hellion force, don't get me wrong, but RiSky has been able to meet said Hellion force with all of his queens. Looking at the unit tab, we have 10 queens in total. That is more than enough here to deflect against not just Hellions, but even a Hellbat push. So maybe, again, it was a wise choice for Seither to pivot away from that idea, as he is getting his 3rd up and running, working on his bio. He did throw down additional Raxes here. Just 5 Raxes in total on 3 bases. Quite, you know, the production that we would expect to see.
Yeah, pretty much. Not going into any all-ins anytime soon is Seither.
Yeah.
Yep. And things are just, I mean, I'm just looking at the production line, I'm looking at maps, and I'm like, yep, this is an economic game that we've got here.
It's relatively passive. You know, we had a little bit of like a weird switch of gears earlier, sure, but outside of that, you know, Seither's just been poking and prodding. RiSky has been free to just spread creep to his heart's content. And again, I do think that this all just kind of leads to just the way the data C is. Like, it does seem as if both players are willing to go into the later stages of this game. Finally, Seither is moving out here, and this is lined up with 1-1. Likewise, RiSky just finished up Baneling Speed.
Yeah, just finished up Baneling Speed, and Muscular Augments is on the way as well. So,
and we are back. I do humbly apologize. I'm so sorry for the internet going down the way that it did. I apologize for the technical issues that we had, but we are back, and the players were grateful enough to allow us to resume from replay and continue where we left off.
Yeah, very gracious of our players here. We do appreciate it a lot to, you know, accommodate for the storms going down lately and basically everywhere in the world right now.
Yeah, exactly. Thankfully, we didn't actually miss out on anything. We were kind
of...
it
was a passive game.
Yeah, we were talking about how, you know, everything was kind of building up towards this one moment here where we do see Seither moving out with a bit of a double drop. Again, just clearing out whatever creep he can. But for the most part, leading up to this game, RiSky, you know, he's just been droning up, been happily just taking more bases. Seither, likewise, just building up towards that 1-1 time.
Yeah, getting a couple more Araxes on the way, so things are really going to ramp up pretty soon here when it comes to the aggression from Seither. And RiSky is, taking up as quickly and as hard as he can as well, finishing up all of his upgrades on those Hydras. Hive is about a quarter of the way done.
Yeah, this is where I start to worry a little bit here for Seither, because RiSky has been left alone to tech up. As you were saying, he's been able to drone up to 85. I think that's actually what I was in the middle of talking about as we were being cut off. But yeah, like his drone count is looking quite impressive. He's already working up towards that Hive. He has Lingbane Hydra already. Like tech-wise, worker-wise, RiSky is where he wants to be.
Yeah, he's hit that 80 drone mark that Zerg really wants to be in the late game, and then some. He's on 94 workers at the moment, 96 even. He can just start throwing down spore crawlers and spine crawlers if he really wanted to get a little bit more supply for later down the line.
Yeah, exactly. And oh my god, looks like the Medivacs are barely going to be able to escape here. The clutches of these Hydras, and at the same time, do have a bit of a double drop here towards the bottom right hand corner. RiSky completely out of position. Seither finally going to be dealing some damage.
It is kind of the playstyle that Seither has been known for a lot of times in the past, that just mass multi-prong maneuver before Azure became the master of that in the region. Seither was the first.
Yeah, exactly. You know, picking up a couple of workers, dealing some decent damage to this hatchery. He could come back to snipe this later on. At the same time, we do have a double jump head towards the main base as well. So right now, Seither just testing the multi-prong or the reaction times here of RiSky, while back at home, he's working up, taking up towards Ghosts.
how long has that medevac been on like 1 health, man? And it's full of bio as well.
Speaking of, 1 medevac does go down here in the main base as well. A risky move from Seither, but you know what? Oh, he snipes the queen in the end. Decent pickup as well. Gonna be able to save an entire medevac full of units.
Yeah, that was about the bulk of that force that was moving around the map and was harassing and dropping a lot of the time. RiSky is now maxed out. Seither not too far behind either. So we're about to see things come to a head very, very soon.
Yeah, exactly, as RiSky is now at that max out point, and now that he has these Vipers that are on the way, we can finally see RiSky try and lay siege upon the bases of Seither. Seither, likewise, has been able to comfortably get up to 4 bases. His tank line is defensive. Oh my god. It's almost like he's playing like a SimCity game with the way his depots are set up here. My oh my. So very defensive, very fortified, but Blinding Clouds do kind of change that.
Yeah, I'm looking at all these tanks, and I'm looking at how closely they are packed to each other. It's not going to take too many to basically shut down more than half of the entire tank line from the fight.
Yeah, and I think maybe Seither's aware of that, so I do appreciate that he's starting to split up his army a little bit more. His tanks are being spread out a little bit more thinly, so they aren't affected by those Blinding Clouds as heavily. Meanwhile, we do have a double drop here in the main base. Gonna go uncontested. The Vipers are looking a little bit exposed, but it looks like, yeah, they go for the power bombs. They're gonna shut down the drops.
Finally, that medevac goes down. But the time has kind of passed here for Seither. He was looking to get rid of a little bit of supply so he can get a couple more tanks and a couple more ghosts. Does he need that many more tanks? I guess he kind of does, if we're going to be in that split map scenario.
Yeah, we do have 10 tanks so far here for Seither, 3 more on the way, but RiSky just threw away a lot of supply. I don't know if you noticed, but a lot of Banelings and Hydras just went down. That was a very expensive fight for RiSky. It wasn't even really much of a fight. But I guess you could argue it's okay because RiSky is looking to maybe tech up and maybe get into lurkers.
Yeah, like we said, he was maxed out for a while with way too many workers. A lot of Lings and a lot of Banes. Now a very inefficient army, to say the least. Now, though, he's really starting to round that off with those lurkers.
Yeah, exactly. And we're in a situation where, I don't know if you remember when we were casting NXZ yesterday about how lurkers have their place in this matchup. They have their place in this stage of the game. And typically you want to go into lurkers when the tank count is a little bit lower. If you rush into lurkers a little bit faster, then ideally you want to try and go for something like Nidus's into the main.
Yeah, that's a really, really great way of just disrupting the Terran attention mostly, but also a lot of their production as well can be picked off just like that. It will be a little bit tricky to do against Seither though, because he has already got so many missile turrets up in his main.
Yeah, exactly. The turret ring in his main is real. Meanwhile, these Vipers actually already utilize a lot of their energy because of the mass yoinks we saw on those drops. So they're not going to be too useful here. You know, the Hydra's just picking away at the wall. Meanwhile, double drop on the left-hand side is going to get cleaned up as well. And you were talking about the turret line. We actually don't really have much of a turret line in the main, so Seither is vulnerable to something like Nidus play.
He absolutely is. There's just so many blind spots over there in that main base. He's got a lot of vision, and he does have that bunker, I guess. But he really doesn't have that many forces to prevent a Nidus from popping out.
Yeah,
if they were in, say, I don't know, right by these additional orbitals.
Exactly, especially because we don't have a sensor tower here either. There's only a tower on the left-hand side, so there is a big blind spot available for RiSky to maybe abuse and make use of. But for the time being, he's still sticking with Lingbane Hydra, and he has found a way in towards that triangular third.
Yeah, we're starting to get to the stage of Data C that I think most of us are familiar with now when it comes to TVZ, where the Berserk player has been maxed out, has been taking their bases, has a huge bank, and just wants to trade inefficiently and try to break at least one base of the Terran player. That's exactly what RiSky did right now, and he also got a whole ton of ghosts and a couple of tanks behind that, so very inefficient trade, but I'd say a trade that was worth it here for RiSky.
I think killing all those ghosts made it efficient. I'm afraid to look at the units lost tab here, but that was 9 ghosts going down to those Banelings. A very expensive loss there by Seither. Ghosts, ideally, they're energy-based units. They gather value over time. You don't want to be losing them to Banelings like that, and now RiSky has full map control. He's got his creeps surrounding the bases of Seither. Seither is on 5 bases, to be fair, and that there is a lot of power to be had there. But remember that SimCity wall that was at the 3rd base? It's not there anymore.
And the wall is not even existing anymore. It's not even not a wall.
The wall is no longer a wall, mate. It's not. Aye. And RiSky's had a really interesting approach with his Vipers. Again, opposed to the previous game, as we have a couple of snipes here finally shutting them down. But RiSky was relying a lot more on abducts, less so on on blinding clouds.
Yeah, he really wants to keep a lot of his units alive in that regard. He doesn't just want to rush his entire army into the face of Terrans, even with blinding clouds. He is instead being very careful and very methodical when it comes to those yoinks, but now that he doesn't have them anymore, he is at a bit more of a risk. He's just going for it.
Yeah, exactly. Without any Vipers at all, he just aims in towards the defensive line here of Seither. To be fair, there wasn't a lot of buildings to really make use of to really provide Seither a better defensive advantage, but yeah, that was an interesting fight from RiSky, but I guess definitely one that he can afford. I just noticed, look at his bank. It's terrifying.
He is almost on 10k minerals and 6.5k gas. He is mining insanely more than Seither is right now. Even with mules, just goes to show you the power of bases.
Power of bases, the power of the economy. RiSky has 104 drones right now. It does mean that his army is smaller, but if he's always the aggressor, if he's the one dictating when and where there are engagements, he can just rebuild remax before there's a counterattack.
Pretty much, and a nice engagement here in the 4th base location. He's taking out so many SCVs, and he gets a couple of tanks. The ghosts this time do not fall, however. That's a lot of ghosts.
That's a lot of ghosts. This time, Seither is paying attention to them. At the same time, he's trying to take a 6th base here, clearing up as much creep as possible. It's going to be so difficult to take that base. At the same time, Lings are actually wreaking havoc here in the natural.
And even more SCVs go down. A couple of supply depots as well. Surprisingly, that's not enough to really make a dent in the supply cap of Seither. The factory won't burn down.
Thankfully, we do have a bit of a repair there, but 16 SCVs went down. Seither doesn't have a very large worker count to kind of replace that. And without a sensor tower, we have just, run by after run by, continuing to just harass and pummel this base. At the same time, RiSky is getting ready to shut down that 6th.
Yeah, I will say that despite all the punishment that Seither has been taking throughout this game, he has been on 5 bases for a very long time. He's been in a decent economic position. It's just not exactly comparable to the amount of mining that RiSky has right now.
That's the thing, right? And even here, a couple more tanks going down. What I'm worried about is that Seither doesn't have a gas bank right now. Like, he can't really afford to replace tanks, to replace ghosts, to replace these high-intensive units. We see that Seither is even getting Thors right now, which can help against Vipers, don't get us wrong, but maybe not the unit that he needs right now. He's just really struggling to just stay maxed to keep up with RiSky.
Yeah, there comes a time in the TVZ, in the ultra late game of TVZ, where all of a sudden Marines become your most valuable unit. That time is not now. Yeah, problem is, Seither doesn't really have gas to make anything but Marines.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the Ling Bane rolls in once again. It looks like the ghosts are going to be saved, but at the cost of all of those tanks. Again, a decent fight here, a decent trade for Seither because he was able to keep all of his ghosts alive, but I just don't know how much more we can reiterate that Seither needs to win so many more fights to finally get rid of this bank for RiSky.
Yeah, I mean, it's a familiar story on Data C where the Terran player wants to turtle up and he wants to take a lot of engagements against the Zerg player, but like you said, that's gonna have to happen over and over and over and over again before Seither has any chance of going for a counterattack.
Yeah, exactly, and RiSky, he just keeps abusing this position here, the triangular third. As soon as it was first broken, as soon as that wall went down, it just never has gotten back up. Lings even get into the natural, trying to focus down that Ghost Academy. The creep is actually pushing up this ramp as well, and Seither just hasn't been able to plug up that wall.
Yeah, more abducts on a ton of these tanks. Plenty more in the back line, but look at all of those Banelings crashing into just about everything, but in the end, most of them will just get targeted down by the tanks in the backline. Seither, all of a sudden taking a huge army supply lead.
Yeah, RiSky threw away a lot of Banelings there. He's replacing them. That's the thing. Like, you were like, oh my god, there are so many Banelings. They kill nothing. They weren't really able to trade well at all, but he's trading well enough. Seither, what I will say is that, hey, mate, look, he's got the 6th up. You know, he's actually mining from it. He has the rich Vespian gas, which is pretty important. The top left-hand base has been left untouched. RiSky hasn't making use of that, but he doesn't care. He once again goes and slips on into the natural.
Yeah, a lot of production of Seither is concentrated in this area. He is starting to rebuild a little bit outside of his main base. RiSky will not go straight into the main, however, he will be chased back by a sandwich of Thors, plus a bunch of ghosts as well.
Yeah, exactly. This is maybe the first time that RiSky pushing towards the natural again didn't really trade too efficiently. There was no way into the main base. The natural was forced to be lifted, to be fair, and we had to rebuild that Ghost Academy. But yeah, Seither's just really struggling to hold on to his two sides, essentially.
Yeah, but he's doing a good job of holding on to one side at a time. And now that RiSky has spent a lot of his army to break one end of Seither's base, he doesn't really have the supply to split them up yet again. Or again yet.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just trying to think about like how RiSky wants to approach this, because we've seen him time and time again push in towards this fortified location. I think we both agree that that's probably not the best way to go about this. Now Seither is wise to all these run-bys in towards the natural, so he's leaving a lot of supply there instead. But RiSky tries to funnel through or try to thread the needle through the center of the map, doesn't find a way in either. So Seither now he's actually, you know, solidifying his position.
Yeah, it'll be tough for him to really move across the map anytime soon, but like you said, he's in a really fortified position. He's mining a whole lot, pretty comparable to, no, not at all comparable to what RiSky has, but, you know, he's mining enough to keep his supply up, which is the important aspect. RiSky once again going straight to the main, many Lings, so many Banelings, and in the end, they kill a couple of Thors, which is not bad.
Yeah, every time, you know, what, 2-3 Thors, a tank going down as well. Unfortunately, the ghosts weren't in position to snipe and to push this army back, so Seither forced back once again. But thankfully, though, again, he's able to rebuild. He has this gas mining base. If he can somehow establish the base towards the top left, that would honestly be pretty huge. That would kind of just give him an influx of minerals and gas to work with, and he can just maintain his form in this game.
The Lingbane is back, trying to find a way into that main base. I love the use of these ducts here by RiSky. I don't think I've seen any other Berserk player, at least recently, use abducts so methodically as RiSky has.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's been really interesting to see him play it out. It feels a little bit unique in that sense, but Seither has to respond to this. This is critical damage. His production cannot be compromised.
Yeah, these are just about every single one of his barracks. He doesn't really have a way of remaking ghosts if these go down. He does have a lot of factories outside of his base, but those are factories, and meanwhile we have another assault here to the western bases of Seither. RiSky will finally break that rich Vespene base of Seither.
Exactly, RiSky, he succeeded in distracting Seither again. Seither knew the threat of his main base. He knew that he could not afford to lose it. He had to respond. He moved all of his ghosts over, and that exposed his 6th base. Finally, it did go down.
And now Seither is back in a position where he is aching for minerals and even gas as well. He has somewhat of a bank here. That isn't too bad, but that's pretty much all he has for pretty much a foreseeable future. It's going to be difficult for him to reestablish 6.
It really will be difficult. So not impossible, just difficult at this stage of the game. Like, he's been doing a really good job these past couple of minutes to really keep his ghost count up and keep it alive and keep it relatively healthy. So definitely props to Seither there, but oh god, the creep is relentless. It's so suffocating, and we were talking about Nidus earlier. Here we go.
Yeah, really good use of these. Not infested marines, imposter marines. That's not the term for it. Changelings, there we go. Ninja marines. To just really get a couple of lurkers in there. Once again, the Lingbane is crashing onto the main mech army of Seither. Ghosts are in the back line, so not too much damage on the bio units. But does that matter in the end? Because now the production is completely compromised for Seither.
Exactly. Now that we have our upgrades, now that we have our hive tech, now is the time for the lurkers. They all dive into the main base. 0 production available here for Seither. You were talking about it before. We do have some factories outside, and Seither was very quick to lift up, very quick to abandon his main base. But again, like, he's just losing more and more territory on day to see.
Yeah, he's essentially being forced to lift up and move his production and his bases closer to the RiSky side of the map. The problem is, RiSky's already taken that real estate.
Yeah, like Seither is basically being boxed into a corner right now, and there is no way out. Finally, he clears up the creep in the top left, which means he can actually expand. If he also takes down this this weakened hatchery here on the left-hand side, he will be able to take 2 more bases. There is a world where this game will continue and Seither can get like some decent mining.
Yep, I guess we're gonna be here for a while. Get yourselves in.
If he can break this location, if he can break it, we'll see. I mean, as Banelings roll in and they just delete another base.
Yeah, it unfortunately wasn't the planetary. Seither, his attention was elsewhere before turning that base, and now it will go down as it's in the air. The Hydras, the Lings, and the Banelings are causing so much havoc as the Lurkers burrow themselves outside of the production once again. GG is called. RiSky will take game number 1.
GG, well played. What an intense game, what a long game. It's kind of what we expect on D2C. Seither honestly had a pretty good start. Like, I was really impressed when he finally did get his 5th, well, he got his 5th base pretty unhindered. But alas, there were some kind of holes in the defenses of Seither, and RiSky was fully aware of them and abused them as best he could.
Yeah. Once again, that Viper control, man. Game 2. Let me just make sure I got that in.
Yeah, that Viper control was insane. The fact that he was able to just time and time again just hammer home that weakened position on the right-hand side to the point where it just opened up avenues of attack on the left, right? Like, he was pulling Seither apart.
Yeah, it was looking a little bit shaky at a couple of times, you know, when Seither, because of his SimCity, forced RiSky to take, I think, as inefficient... Seither was taking about as efficient trades as possible, really. But in the end, RiSky knew Seither is boxing himself into his side of the map. I am just going to take the rest of the entire map myself, and I can get away with just sending Lingbane after Lingbane after Lingbane into tank lines. I have so much larva, I have so many minerals, and so much gas that really I can do whatever the hell I want.
Yeah, it was pretty impressive. What RiSky was able to accomplish there on D2C. I have to wonder, like, see, if you remember, like, maybe it's also because of the openers as well. If you remember, Seither initially did want to go for a bit of a hellbat push, and then he had to, like, again, change his plans and go for something else instead, and maybe that kind of forced him to be a little bit more passive and defensive because he couldn't hit the timing that he wanted to. He was being active with his double drops, if you remember, so to be fair, he was, like, trying to slow down RiSky, but at that point, it did feel a little bit too late.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit about it yesterday, about how TVZ, now more so than ever, is super prone to snowballing one way or another. You know, it's all about getting that map control and maintaining that momentum as early as you can as either the Terran or the Zerg player. Seither gave that up a little bit at the start, but like you said, he was doing a lot to try to get back, try to regain that map control and try to get the snowball rolling in his favor, but I think RiSky's momentum was just a little bit too much for him.
Yeah, I guess it was, and I guess that's also the nature of D2C as well. That's why we've seen so many long turtle games, and there are players like Maru that can fight back and just be ultra defensive and ultra efficient, more so than what we saw from Seither, and so we know that it's definitely possible there, but Seither did end up lacking a little bit in the end. And now we're getting into game number 2. I imagine we're not going to see a repeat though, a very different map.
Yeah. Map that doesn't favor the turtle as much. Prefers the tortoise. I didn't know what that means. As we continue our series now on game number 2, Inside and Out is going to be the map, and in the top right-hand corner map, starting all the way in the top right-hand corner, we have a blue Terran player coming down from the land of Sydney. Sydney? Somewhere in Australia. He is going to be representing the Mind Freaks. He is Seither. Melbourne. It was one or the other.
And spawning in the bottom left-hand corner of Inside and Out, we have the red Zerg player himself, currently up 1-0 in this best of 3 series. It is RiSky.
Melbourne, of course, the land of PAX, as I'm calling it from now on.
The land of PAX Australia, yeah, you're not wrong. As the Penny Arcade Expo is going to have a StarCraft LAN next week, for those who are unaware, so exciting times. I'm sure Seither will be there himself. I'm sure he'll be there to compete. Oh, but before we get too ahead of ourselves about next week, of course, we are still here in the now, and Seither's up against the wall. One more loss, and he is eliminated from DreamHack.
And I'm getting some serious flashbacks to yesterday, Light, of Raza versus NXZ on Data C. That's a CC first before Barracks being thrown down here by Seither. How many starports are we gonna get?
Oh, boy. Oh no. Don't remind me, puppy. Don't remind me. Oh god. Was that on Inside and Out, or was that on
I believe it was on Data C,
yeah,
but I guess now it's a bit of a moot point. Seither is going for a 2-Rax.
Interesting. Okay, so a much more greedy opener going for that CC first will be completed very soon here. So he's going to be having that economic advantage. Meanwhile, with these 2 Raxes, he's also going to be applying a lot of pressure across the map with his Reapers. Oh no! Oh my god! Yeah, my mistake.
As he goes Marine first. I mean, I'm looking at the slide, and I can't think of anything other than just going Mass Marine, but at the same time, if you're going Mass Marine, wouldn't you proxy at least one of the Raxes?
Well, I mean, this is a more economic opener, right? Like
that is true.
Oh my god, so very, very greedy play here off with 1 Marine to defend. Again, any kind of roach push would be devastating, or early aggression, but we're going straight into our add-ons as well, and straight into our factory.
Okay, so I guess it's just going to be a bit of a variant of the 2-1-1. I have to wonder if we're even going to see Medifacts with this, but yeah, build that I have not seen before in TVZ.
Well, this is very ballsy. So a couple of things come into play. One, it's very greedy. One, it's very... greedy is probably just the best way to put it. The 1 Marine is going to be able to shoo away this Ling, and finally, because of the saturation, because of the CC, because of the orbital, RiSky should be aware of the CC first. But Seither did all this blind. He didn't go for an SCV scout, he didn't go for a Reaper scout. If there was an earlier pool, if there was an earlier Roach Warren, Seither would probably be dead. So again, he's gambling quite a bit here, and he's in a way getting away with it.
Yeah, for the time being, I'm staring at that factory to see what add-on gets thrown down. Seither is gonna go for a 3rd CC before Starport. A very interesting way of going about it, but like you said, one that has paid off for Seither. He's getting away entirely with all his greed. RiSky, meanwhile, on the other side of the map, just doing things standard.
Yeah, and I'm sure if Asher was here, he'd be like, yeah, Gumiho did this. I wouldn't be surprised if Gumiho did, because it's really greedy. Obviously, you're completely forfeiting any kind of map control right now. There are 0 Hellions, so RiSky is free to drone and spread creep to his heart's content. So RiSky just has free reign on his side of the map right now. But the goal of this, and that will all change once we get Medivacs out, once we get our double drop out across the map.
Exactly. We could see a very similar scenario to game number 1, where, you know, Seither just kind of gives up that map control and turtles up for the rest of the game, or more likely, Seither is building up to a very potent timing with Stim, with Medivacs, and he doesn't have an eBay yet, so I guess not quite 1-1 or +1, but yeah, the double drop can still do a lot to keep RiSky at bay.
Yeah, it really can, and it can really catch RiSky off guard as well, you know, picking off a couple of queens, picking off a couple of workers, depending on where it does land. So this is going to hit, like, again, very hard. Bearing in mind as well that, of course, we do have a 3rd CC behind this, so Seither is, again, falling back on his economy after this push. But at the same time, this double drop has to do a lot of damage. Like, because of the lack of Hellions, because of the lack of early game presence, he has to do something to slow down RiSky.
Yeah, it's going to need to do something, and even more than that. It's going to have to do a lot, because, yeah, once again, RiSky does have all of the momentum right now. He already has his lair, just about to finish up here. And he is playing this out careful as well. He knows that there's going to be a lot of Marines coming his way, so I appreciate that RiSky has decided to not go for a 4th base just yet.
Yeah, I mean, RiSky, like, he has eyes on the move out. He just saw with his Overlord as well. He's fully aware of the double drop that's coming. We have a couple of Banelings being morphed in. We have 10 queens, and we have 9 queens. We have the 10th queen about to pop out as well, so we have plenty of anti-air available. RiSky is preparing himself for the push. And because of that, yeah, I don't see this double drop doing too much here, other than, I guess, forcing a response and forcing the 4th base to be delayed.
Yeah, which in itself is pretty valuable here. And you want to be on, as much as possible, you want to be on even bases as a Terran player.
Yeah, you really do, as all this creep is being cleared up in the middle of the map. Pushing any further than here, it shouldn't really happen because of the Ling Bane. We are trading a little bit with said Lings. We do have a whole pickup though, and Seither will get out.
Out, quote unquote. He has decided to just drop in the face of this Ling Bane.
Yeah, RiSky taking a bit of a chance here. Immediately does respread this creep. It does mean that his queens are a little bit more vulnerable. There's less creep to maneuver around here, but the Ling Bane is here to meet him, and yeah, it looks like, oh my god, Seither's going to be, once again, just forced away, and RiSky maintains his position in the middle of the map.
Yeah, this time actually dropping behind the debris, or the rocks. Speaking of the rocks, RiSky, I didn't really notice it, but his creep is already spread to that point. He's already past the halfway mark of his base. Seither is going to be in a little bit of trouble trying to take more bases and trying to push out later on the line.
Yeah, exactly. And especially because Inside Now does have less bases compared to Data C, there's pros and cons to that, right? Because this is a smaller map, it does kind of force split map scenarios faster, and it does kind of force engagements faster as well. Likewise, because there are less bases, RiSky won't have anywhere near as large of a bank as he did in the previous game. Or at least he should.
We'll see how that. that's important to keep in mind. As both players are being a little bit more passive and being a little bit more hesitant to get their bases up and running. They know that doing so will leave them a little bit more vulnerable to run-bys and whatnot. As we said, it's a much smaller map than Data C.
Yeah, and because of that, I imagine that RiSky isn't going to drone up as heavily as he did last game. You know, that peak 104 drone count, which was crazy. I don't expect to see that again. So because of that, he's going to be focusing a lot more on his army instead. So I expect to see a more even back and forth between our players. As we do see Seither trying to establish himself on the right-hand side. Oh, but he doesn't notice, and the Banelings do connect.
Yeah, that essentially shuts down that drop for the time being. RiSky doesn't have to worry about too much from the western front or the western side of his bases. He does need to worry a little bit about the eastern side, however, as a double drop moves right into this fourth base location and doesn't really get too much damage done yet. Very quick reactions coming out from RiSky.
Yeah, forces some lost mining time, forces a reaction here from the army at the same time. Looks like RiSky was getting ready for a drop into his main base as well. Seither doesn't find a way in either. So RiSky's done a great job at like holding onto his bases, but you know, the creep is being cleared up a little bit. Like Seither is at least still being active on the map.
Hey, he's about to take his fourth base very, very quickly. I say take his fourth base, but
it's on the way.
CC. Yeah, there we go.
It is on the way as we have another drop active from the left-hand side. Ooh, RiSky not in position at all. Aye. He was getting ready for a drop into the main, or on the right-hand side, he will lose the hatchery.
Yeah, very big pick-off here for Seither. Mining is about to be even. It's about to be evened out pretty soon when it comes to the minerals. Seither already far ahead in the gas mining.
Yeah, and how the turns do table, right? Like, RiSky is being spread thin a little bit here. He's been having a hard time splitting up his army and defending his bases. Like, this is the first time this series where RiSky has lost a hatchery.
Really?
Am I crazy?
Hey, I think it is, yeah.
I don't think he lost the hatchery last game.
Yeah. I don't want to start counting how many bases Seither lost in the last game.
No, we don't know. We need to talk about that. Don't worry about that.
Yeah. We'll be here for a while trying to count them all. RiSky once again trying to go for a couple of run-bys. The Banelings do connect mostly on the tank, but a couple of them do take out a chunk of the Bioforce. No economic damage dealt just yet, however, by RiSky.
Yeah, but after taking down that force on the left-hand side and even pushing away the drop on the right, RiSky has now established himself in the middle of the map. He now doesn't have to worry as much. He has some breathing room. He can re-establish his bases. He can drone up even further, getting up to 89. Oh, he actually is looking to go into that 100 drone count.
Because why the hell not? Just get more resources and trade however inefficiently you need to try to break the Terran bases. RiSky is not maxed out, but he is maxed out with a little bit of an inefficient worker count, so his armies are going to be that much weaker compared to Seither's.
Yeah, and again, RiSky isn't going to be looking to really break any kind of position anytime soon, just because it doesn't have any Vipers. So the defensive positions, or the tank lines even, are going to be pretty terrifying here for RiSky to try and encounter. Meanwhile, we do see a quad drop. Oh my god, actually a Dream drop here in the main base. Going to be forced back.
Yeah, only a couple of Marines get taken out. So decent trade there by Seither. He is now going to be landing that 5th base that Terran needs to get in order to go into late game against Zerg.
Yeah, 5th base is going to be on the way. Thankfully, the creep hasn't reached that area yet. Meanwhile, looks like Seither going to be losing a tank, maybe even the sensor tower on the right-hand side. So going to be a little bit vulnerable to potentially run-bys here. Has to be careful, has to make sure he replaces that.
Yeah, and a wall at least is a wall, and Seither is trading decently efficiently against these Banelings.
Yeah, and here we go. Finally, the Vipers are coming out. +1 range on the way as well, potentially for RiSky to think about getting into lurkers, or at least work towards that tech. I'm surprised we're actually lacking a little bit when it comes to those upgrades, though. We actually don't even have +2 melee for RiSky. Maybe forgetting it.
Yeah, that's definitely worrisome, especially since he is going to Dreidel Glance right about now. This is going to cost him big time when it comes to the engagements. Seither already about to finish up 3-3.
Yeah, like there's going to be a moment here where both armies are maxed. Of course, RiSky does have a lower army supply because of his worker count. And with this 3-3 timing, Seither, he can definitely... Oh, as he has to... no! As he has to kill his Ghost Academy. Feels bad, man. But outside of that, like, he can hit a very strong timing.
He absolutely can. I mean, there's going to be a massive window of opportunity where Seither is going to be ahead in army supply, ahead in the upgrades, ahead in just about everything when it comes to his army. The only thing he's behind in is that production. But I don't think that matters so much in the end if RiSky's Lings and Banelings are going to die before they connect to Seither's army.
Exactly. I mean, again, the window is now open. Seither has to go through it before it closes. RiSky is still a ways off to catch up in those upgrades. Still stuck with Ling, Bane, Hydra. Doesn't have as strong of a defensive capability as Lurkers would provide. So you will see how Seither kind of deals with this. Unfortunately, he did lose his 5th base, and unfortunately, he's more focused on establishing another base and really pushing out right now.
Yeah, I feel like Seither might not realize how far ahead he is in the military supply.
Well, in that and in those in the upgrade timing as well, right?
In the upgrade timing, yeah, and just about everything. I mean, I guess he wants to be a little bit cautious against the Vipers that RiSky has right now. And Seither doesn't have that many ghosts that can deal with them, but even still.
Yeah, and to be fair, like, the creep is slowing him down as well. Like, he has to slowly clear up as much of it as possible before he really commits to any kind of major engagement. He doesn't want to be caught in the middle of the map, in the middle of creep. So because of that, RiSky is buying a lot of time here to catch up. We even have another base being taken on the right-hand side, arguably a Terran base being taken. And Seither can't really do much about that, unfortunately.
Alright, time to strap ourselves in once again, as the game is going to slow down a little from here, but this is a really good run by Marines for Seither. Meanwhile, RiSky smashing this 3rd base location once again. He picks off just about all of the tanks over here and will force a lift. Fortunately, he doesn't have too many Hydras in this army, so he won't be able to kill that.
Meanwhile, no, RiSky coming back a little bit too soon here. More drones are going to go down. This one drop, it wasn't even a drop, a handful of units just waddled across the map is doing an insane amount of damage. Seither, unfortunately, is still contained, and he did lose a lot of tanks, so RiSky is able to buy time, is able to stop any kind of counterattack because of those Vipers.
Now here's my question, Light. Did losing those workers actually work out to the advantage of RiSky?
Yeah, probably,
because now he's still ahead in the drone count, except now he can get a bigger army as well.
Yeah, he really can. Meanwhile, unfortunately, Seither left, what was that, 4 or 5 tanks completely unattended. They were attempting to cover themselves, but Lings made short work of that. At the same time, double drop here on the right-hand side. Once again, RiSky out of position here, being pulled apart on inside and out.
Yeah, RiSky finally losing a ton of workers. He's back down to that 80 worker supply, which is, funnily enough, ideal for late game Zerg. RiSky also has a massive bank behind him too, 13,000 minerals and 4,000 gas. Okay, he could be mining a little bit more gas, but still, he can afford to lose workers and still be ahead when it comes to his economy.
Yeah, he definitely can be, but I'm still really worried about those upgrades. Like, are we ever going to see +2 attack?
He's on
Whether
1-1.
whether it's melee or whether it's range, we just don't have any at all. RiSky just has straight up forgotten about them, and because of that, Seither can just trade that much better.
Yeah, funnily enough, RiSky, despite lacking in the attack upgrades, did get +3 Carapace.
Yeah.
So he's remembered to get his upgrades. He's just neglecting his attack upgrades for whatever reason. I think you're right, like, he did just kind of forget about them.
Yeah, I wouldn't be... Oh my god, as we do see a nuke landing here, it didn't kill any workers whatsoever, but was able to take down so much of the creep as well as the base. A third nuke even landing here on the right-hand side. Oof.
All the workers did evacuate, so at least they'll be able to get back to mining, but they're not going to be mining in bases that have too many more minerals on them.
Yeah, when it comes to RiSky's upgrades, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he only has one of those EV chambers hotkeyed. So because of that, every single time he goes to make upgrades, like he's forgetting one of them. It's possible. But regardless, because that, I mean, Seither just has a little bit of momentum going his way, especially with the triple nuke. A lot of creep has been cleared.
Yeah, and Seither can really do two things from this point. He can continue to slowly expand, if he so desired, or like you said, like, he could just go for a big push to try to get even more, base kills.
Exactly, we go another nuke here on the left-hand side. RiSky, I think, fully aware, is going to back off the moment to try and dive on top of the... Oh my god, no, he wants to try and get the ghost! RiSky? Ooh.
Thankfully, he does split up most of his army before the nuke lands, but unfortunately does lose every single one of his Vipers to the ghost snipes.
Oh, exactly. The Vipers, they go down. The Ghosts are saved as well. This base is going to fall again. Zero creep here whatsoever. RiSky forced to rebuild his Vipers. And again, Seither, he's buying so much breathing room. Like, his bases have been left untouched for the past couple of minutes.
Yeah, we're seeing a very different dynamic compared to game number 1, where this time Seither is in complete control. I say that, but I mean, RiSky still has a huge bank behind him.
He does. Don't get us wrong there, right? Like, he can always rebuild. He can take a bad fight and go and move on from there. I just worry about his high-tech units, right? Like, sure, like, you can train it efficiently, but, you know, we gotta take care of our Vipers. We need them to really fight at all.
You know, you mentioned that RiSky could take a good fight and try to bounce back from there, but can he, though? He still doesn't have his upgrades.
It's fine, Copium. Look, Zerg is so good that we don't even need attack upgrades, okay?
I guess so.
That's what RiSky is here to prove. He's gonna get the race nerfed once again. Oh god, as we do see, we do see Seither even throwing away 15 of his SCVs here, clearing up more of his supply to make more army. Another nuke on the right hand side. This time it is going to be cleaned up though. RiSky is not going to fall for another one of those nukes.
Yeah, RiSky this time has plenty of detection on him with all of his overseers and whatnot. And Seither's starting to push out.
RiSky doesn't see. RiSky doesn't see.
Oh! He sees it right at the end. He evacuates a ton of his drones, and he will be able to keep them alive. Base doesn't die yet. Base doesn't die either, so a decent save here for RiSky.
Yeah, he holds onto the base, but one more nuke and this hatchery will go down. At the same time, we have a turret line being set up on the left-hand side here. RiSky cannot stop this. The siege line is slowly encroaching upon the bases, and RiSky has to give up this position.
Yeah, finally, Seither is starting to establish himself on the map. RiSky once again going for this third base location. Will force a bit of a lift off, and the Banelings will survive some of the volleys from the tanks and from the planetary, but they just don't kill anything, man.
Yeah, I mean, this is a nice trade here for RiSky, I guess, taking down a base, but Seither doesn't really care about this mining base. You know, he's taking fresh bases on the left-hand side anyway. This is one of the bases that just matters to him the least, and it isn't even like an avenue in towards the natural.
Yeah, not if any of those tanks have anything to say about that.
Yeah, exactly. And here we go. The creep has been cleared. Seither going to be getting another one of these bases, refining his army even more. Thor's coming into the mix again to just shut down those Vipers. Have another nuke on the right-hand side. I hope RiSky does get eyes on this. As for the time, he's looking for it, actually. Oh,
that's like half of his entire worker count. Does see it and will be able to take out the ghost right at the end. Got worried for a sec. The Vipers are out once again, and they do yoink these tanks as best as they can.
Yeah, they get 3 tanks. Once again, Seither's Ghost Army was completely out of position. It wasn't there to EMP, wasn't there to snipe the Vipers.
And Seither finally starting to take a massive dent when it comes to his economy. But he has been mining the entire time before this attack happened, so he actually has a bit of a bank behind him. He can rebuild his army if he so chooses. He can't just max out an army if he so chooses to, and that's exactly what he's doing with Thors, with Liberators, with tanks, and with Ghosts.
Yeah, I mean, look at this tank line. Like, there's no way to push in here for RiSky. Not with the army he has. Not unless he decides to adopt it and tech up and maybe even go into a greater spire. I guess it could be possible, but we would need a lot of Vipers and a lot of Blinding Clouds.
And upgrades.
And upgrades. Ah! Oh god, I want to forget about it. It's
I can't forget about it. It just flashes at the bottom of the control card every now and then. I'm like, yep, that's 1-3.
It really is. Meanwhile, we do see a couple more tanks getting taken down here, but here we go. The Ghosts weren't too far off. A couple more snipes going off, chasing away this army.
And RiSky is starting to spend his bank a little bit. I mean, he's just making Lings and Banes, so it's a very cost-efficient army that RiSky is going for. Not exactly the most effective army, though. I do agree with you 100%. You know, maybe Lurkers or a Greater Spire is exactly what RiSky would want to tech into right now. It's not like he's hurting for resources to get into them.
Yeah, and like when I mention Lurkers, I don't really mean Lurkers to break this line, not at all. I mean to compromise the main base, basically, to take down the production once again, just like RiSky did in the last game on Data C. That is a win condition for him. At the moment, though, he's sticking with a more mobile army. There is value here, don't get me wrong. There's a lot you can do. You can just run around your opponents, and likewise, here we go, he's going to be able to take down this Planetary.
Yeah, a couple of good yoinks once again on the tanks, but the Vipers are going to get caught by the Ghosts. One of them gets sniped.
Yeah, the other one, not quite sniped in the end. RiSky is able to pull it back in time. But alas, yeah, this space is looking a little bit vulnerable here. The tanks aren't quite in position to fully cover this, so RiSky has identified that. He is going to be hitting the space as often as he can. He even has vision in the main base if he did want to try and go for something like a Nidus. Doesn't have any yet. Doesn't have any Lurkers yet, but, you know, the option will be there.
Yeah, he can, if he wants to. But he doesn't seem to want to at the moment. It really feels like RiSky is a little tunnel visioned right now.
Yeah, and he's just poking and prodding. I kind of like it. He's taking it slow. You know, he has a lot of money to work with, so he can afford to just try and find a way in. Like, check for any kind of weaknesses here and there. Throw away a couple of armies, a couple of 200 supply armies of Ling Bane. He can do this.
Why not?
For a while, at least.
Yeah, and I don't know for how much longer, because Seither is well aware that, you know, the time for mining is past. He's just trying to get rid of as many of his workers as possible to clear up that supply to get an even bigger army.
Yeah, look at the army supply for Seither. It's crazy. It's 3-3. RiSky. Like, Seither's army is massive and about to be 3-3-3-3 actually with his vehicle upgrades. Oh my god.
Yeah, the only way I see RiSky taking an engagement, a good enough engagement to keep this game going, is if he's able to catch Seither unsieged in the middle of the map. But even then, it's going to be difficult for him to close it out just because he is behind in the army supply and because he is behind in the upgrades. We cannot stress that enough. There's just no way for RiSky to kill the units of Seither.
Yeah, he's been having a really hard time. What he has been doing is, you know, hindering the economy, you know, hindering the production a little bit, you know, like trying to find a way in, just setting himself up for success later on. We're just kind of waiting for that moment. Oh boy.
Yeah, I mean, RiSky once again just using his Vipers however he can, just trying to yoink whatever units he can. I guess there are a couple of choke points as well here that if RiSky decided to fight in them, he could throw down a couple of Blinding Clouds and just allow his Lings and Banes to crash onto the rest of the army, but Seither is really unwilling to give him that position.
really is. But as Seither moves out towards the top right, he just leaves his base vulnerable to the bottom left. So Ling Rumbai is going to be able to clean that up. At the same time, though, this is the most important mining base here for RiSky. He cannot afford to lose this at all.
Yeah, just about pretty much all of his workers are mining from that base. I believe it's the last base that has minerals and gas on it. But RiSky is about to crash into the army right now. Seither has spent his gas bank, which is important to note. It's going to be difficult for him to remake as large of an army like this, but because of how big the army is, because of how well upgraded it is, he doesn't lose it.
Mate, look at that siege line behind this. Like, Seither, he was ready for a fight, and boy, did he take it again, especially without any kind of attack upgrades. RiSky cannot engage here. He loses his last mining base. There's literally zero mining.
The bank he has is all of the resources he's going to get for the rest of this game. He's getting pathogen glands for infestors?
Yeah, you know, he's going to be working on some more energy-based units. I don't fault him for that. But, like, this is why we were talking so much about how Inside and Out is so different today to see. The amount of bases are far fewer, and because the map is smaller, it forces these engagements a little bit sooner as well. Again, RiSky just won't have as much freedom, as much leeway as he did in game number 1. And I don't know if infestors are the right call. They're great against ghosts, don't get us wrong, but it's going to be hard to get on top of the ghosts with all these tanks.
Yeah, a couple of key fungals can absolutely change the state of the game. RiSky might not have any mining on this base, but he doesn't have that many hatcheries in all fairness, so larva is going to be a resource that he also needs to make the best use of as possible. Oh man, Seither just establishing his dominance once again. Like, this was my base before you took it. I'm gonna mine from it. Long distance mine from it.
Yoink. I mean, yo, like, every mineral patch counts right now for RiSky. Like, it's so important that he actually gets some mining going. So here we go. He takes the left-hand side. He's going to try and take the top right-hand corner as well. The army is completely gone, by the way. Like, Seither, he's not looking to defend that position at all.
Yeah, I mean, he knows that this position isn't the most valuable for him. It's starting to run out of resources. He needs to mine from his right-hand corner, the right-hand corner of the map, as much as possible. Starting to lose a lot of SCVs, actually most of his SCVs, but Seither is completely fine with it. The only SCVs he needs right now is to mine gas. Every other free supply should be utilized by his army.
I've never quite seen a Terran supply like this. Seither is basically 200 supply with 4 workers. Everything else is army. Like, at a certain point, you have to be like, mate, Seither, just A move across the map. Oh, but that time has come and gone because RiSky is now finally getting into lurkers.
That's what we're talking about. They are going to be +1 lurkers, unfortunately.
Yeah,
but at this point, Seither has gone back to making Marines.
Oh my god, I'm like, let's go, we have 20 lurkers on the way. And you're like, yeah, but they're +1 lurkers. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're not wrong, you know? Like,
Look, if I know anything about TVZ, right? Lurkers can be a morale shock to the Terran player. Especially when the Terran player has that many Marines.
True.
You know.
You're not wrong. As soon as Seither sees all these lurkers, he may just tap out of the game.
Yeah, he's looking smooch.
He's gonna
like, this game has gone on for too long.
He's gonna smurge hard, mate. Here we go. RiSky's rotating towards the top left-hand corner of the map. Seither is responding. He now finally has eyes on the entire army, and he's gonna be feeling pretty good about himself, to be honest. Like, with tanks and with liberators, like, Seither can definitely take a fight.
But Seither does have the high ground, or RiSky, sorry, does have the high ground, and he's trying to bait Seither into it as much as possible. Seither scans the army, decides there is no need for me to try to get on top of that.
He's trying to cut him off.
Bypass the army and, yeah, cut him off entirely.
Yeah, exactly. But here we go. The Liberators do get picked up on the front line. Oh, the medevac's a little bit too far forward as well. Tanks do siege, but boy, are they clumped. They do stop the advance of RiSky, but it's not going to take too many blinding clouds to really shut this down.
And RiSky is getting ready for that. Seither is well aware that all his tanks are clumped up, so he's trying to reposition most of them as much as possible. RiSky does need to be careful about how he engages with his Vipers, though. That's a lot of Thors, a lot of Marines, and a lot of Ghosts here to secure the tanks.
Yeah, you're not wrong, mate. You're not wrong. As RiSky is mining towards towards these fresh base, quote-unquote fresh bases of Seither. He's gonna rotate around. Actually, Seither does have eyes on this.
You know, good as new bases.
Yeah, yeah. And now Seither, he's gonna get knocked down to 0 mining as well. What you see is what you get. RiSky is run out of bank though. He actually has basically zero minerals.
Yeah, if there was ever a point where players would wish you could trade minerals, you could trade gas for minerals like you can in a couple arcade games, now would be the time. RiSky gonna collapse on top of his entire army. He has nothing left when it comes to his resources. So many blinding clouds on top of these tanks will keep some of his units alive, but nowhere near enough of them. Seither has taken the engagement and will be taking this game as well, tying us up sideways 1-1 very shortly.
That was a meat grinder. GG gets called. RiSky threw down the blinding clouds. He just YOLO'd in one big fight and he lost everything. GG.
We're going into our ace match. I like to think that that was the moment where RiSky realized that he didn't have his upgrades. And he just decided to end the game. And with that, yeah, we're getting into game number 3 here.
We are getting into game number 3, and that was again a very interesting. I'm impressed that Seither was able to trade as well as he did. There was a moment where RiSky once again had like 10k, 6k bank when it came to minerals and gas. But as we saw, just because of the map layout, he had a very hard time breaking the defenses of Seither. Sure, we can rant about the upgrades, but like even if he did have the upgrades, it's very possible that the game would have played out the same way anyway, just because of the positioning there from Seither. Really recognizing the strengths and weaknesses of the map. And speaking of the map, like I'm a little bit shocked, but game 3 is going to be on Waterfall. Yeah,
we're seeing this a surprising amount lately on TVZ itself, because, again, Waterfall is typically seen as the Terran favorite map. The most Terran favorite map in this current map pool.
Yeah, it really is. And I was looking at the vetoes earlier, and what interested me was that RiSky vetoed the more larger maps. He vetoed Cosmic Sapphire and Tropical Sacrifice. 2 very large maps, 2... again, very defensive maps as well. It looked as if RiSky wanted to avoid more later game scenarios here. So I assumed he was going to be more aggressive on Inside and Out. He wasn't. So I worry here, is he going to go for something like a more roach timing based attack on Waterfall? He's going to make use of the small map, or not?
I'm hoping that's what it's going to be here, as we load into Waterfall for game number 3, concluding our best of 3 elimination match here in the group stage. Over in the top right-hand corner map, starting all the way in the top right-hand corner, we have our red Zerg player coming up from the land of the UK, representing New Zealand and himself, as he is currently teamless. He is RiSky.
And spawning in the bottom left-hand corner of Waterfall, we have the Australian Terran player himself, representing Team Mindfreak. It is Seither.
This time, I'm going for Arax first.
Yes. Meanwhile, thank you so much for the feedback, and I do apologize that maybe the music was a little bit too loud. I think when when we had to restart the stream, maybe some of the sound settings were reset, so I do apologize for that. Let us know. Hopefully, it does sound better.
Yeah, fingers crossed. This is a on-the-fly process that we're having over here.
It's a team effort, okay? It's a team effort.
Yeah.
Oh boy. But so far here we do have a much more standard opener from Seither. This time not going for a CC first.
Yeah, gonna be a little bit safer here with his Rax. Should be a Reaper expand coming out from him. Meanwhile, RiSky once again going for a hatch gas pool. But just because he's going for a hatch first doesn't mean he won't grab a Roach Warren.
Yeah, I mean, again, RiSky 100% has to change his approach on this map specifically, right? We've seen him play the same way both on Inside and Out and Data C, but we saw how much pressure a Terran can really apply to a Zerg player yesterday, right? In Raza versus NXZ, where Raza was just constantly in NXZ's face, and NXZ was really struggling to hold on to his 6th, 5th, and even 4th base. He was just being completely pulled apart, and he was doing a great job at holding on, but all he could do was hold on. He could never really counterattack to his fullest.
Yeah, but now it may be a bit of a different story here for RiSky, as that is in fact a Roach Worm being thrown down behind the mineral lines. Unfortunately for him though, Seither actually doesn't scout it yet.
Yeah, exactly. This makes a lot of sense. Roach pushes are so much more powerful on Waterfall. So we got the Roach Warren is on the way behind the mineral line. The Reaper is alive, by the way, but so far Seither hasn't gone in.
Yeah, prioritizing drone kills for the time being. Queen should shoo this Reaper away, and he just has not gone behind the mineral line at all.
Yeah, I mean,
scout this.
Meanwhile, we do have 2 Lings across the map as well. Just going to be delaying this CC. Seither, there should be a little bit of alarm bells ringing here. One little thing that did just happen, as he actually loses 2 SCVs across the map, is that a Queen didn't pop out of the main. It actually came from the low ground because only 1 queen was made because of the Roach Warren. And if Seither recognized that, then he should realize that something is amiss. Unfortunately, the Reaper actually came back home, and so far there is no bunker. We don't see any signs that Seither is aware of a Roach push.
Yeah, I mean, he's getting a tech lab on his barracks, I guess, but he's only getting it now. Finally, Seither will confirm the Roaches coming out his way, but is it too late?
Yeah, exactly. We have 6 Roaches coming across the map here for RiSky. They're looking to deny any kind of mining here on the low ground. Seither cannot afford to hold this location, so he's going to throw down a bunker on the high ground instead. And the bunker isn't quite done. It may actually not finish.
Yeah, that SCV is just a little bit too exposed. The bunker was, in fact, right on the edge of the base there, and Seither is going to be losing a lot more SCVs by the time this is done.
Oh my god, it may be over before it began, because the Hellions go down. The bunker once again will not finish. The Hellions are not really what you want to deal with Roaches. There is a Marauder, don't get me wrong, and the Marauder is doing so much here to try and hold the line. But is it going to be enough?
And the Marauder pretty much working overtime right now, but it's starting to get targeted down. There's no healing on it, and it will be taken out. RiSky doing such a good job of morphing his weakened Roaches into Ravagers. Even more damage is being dealt over here, and yeah, I would like to echo what you said over there. Like, this game might continue, but it's essentially over before it began. Look at that worker supply difference between Seither and RiSky. RiSky now on 3 bases, now hasn't actually stopped producing Roaches behind all of this, but I think he knows that, yep, there we go, a couple of more drones being made. He knows that the time has come to transition to the mid-game with such a huge economic lead. Yeah,
like, because of what he scattered across the map with his Roach push as well, he saw, okay, there was no, because of the timing of the starport, it was a 3rd CC before starport opener from Seither. Like, there's not going to be any drop anytime soon. I am free to drone up as much as I want to, and it's going to be an uphill battle here for Seither. He's got a couple of options. He does have a 3rd CC, so he can try and turtle and macro up, but is that really what you want to be doing on Waterfall?
It's a little bit tricky, to say the least. There aren't quite as many choke points on it as compared to, say, Tropical Sacrifice or Data C.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are some decent defensive positions, don't get us wrong, but there aren't that many bases to take either. There is going to be a moment here once Stim finishes that maybe we can see a double drop move out from Seither, but again, like, so many hopes and dreams are going to rest on the shoulders of that double drop, as we even see an add-on switch instead. We're going to be getting a reactor. It's going to take a while before we, I mean, to be fair, it's going to be a while before we even have the Marine count to sustain any kind of push.
Yeah, any kind of push or any kind of drop even here. For Seither, he is doing the most he can do right now, which you gotta appreciate. His Hellions pick off a couple of drones wherever he can. His Viking is still alive, and it was picking off Overlords while they were still on the map. So Seither is doing whatever he can to climb back and reduce his deficit that he's got, but he's gonna have to do a lot more than just that.
Yeah. I mean, with that, he goes even for a Viking drop. Landed Viking harass in the main base. You love to see it. It goes to show that Seither is fully aware of how behind he is and how much damage he has to do. Just forces some lost mine time. One drone going down, nothing too major. As RiSky going across the map, getting another SCV.
Yeah, he doesn't go all the way into the natural base. I think he is well aware that Seither should have a couple of defenses back home to deal with this, but yeah, whatever he can get right now is a positive.
Yeah, whatever he can get. And, you know, we do have a decent army here once the medevacs do pop. So Seither could maybe try to find a way in. Looking at the units tab, what do we have to defend? We only have 4 roaches right now for RiSky. More lings are coming out. We do not have a baneling nest, though. So, yeah, there's going to be some potential for damage with this drop.
Yeah, we don't see a baneling nest, and that's because RiSky has opted to go into a Spire instead. He should be finished droning for now. He is on 70 drones towards the mid-game. If he continued to drone from here, I think he would just die.
He needs a standing army, and he is getting one. You know, the mutas are going to be able to shut down any kind of drop. There we go. Finally, we have the baneling nest. He did delay it for a faster transition into mutas. And this is another kind of win condition here for RiSky. If Seither doesn't see this, there's no reason to make turrets, there's no reason to protect his mineral line, and the mutas are just going to go ham.
Yeah, the last thing Seither wants right now is to waste minerals on missile turrets or anything like that. He is forced to cut corners, and if he cuts too much of it, RiSky's just going to give him a hand and cut the entire thing off. I don't know where I was going with that, but... the entire corner off, question mark?
Yeah, we do have that double jump in the main base again. No banelings whatsoever. We don't even have ling speed, by the way, so Seither is going to be trading so incredibly well against this army, and we don't really want to come in with our mutas, so this is kind of best case scenario, but at the same time, mutas, they just go across the map, and they are wreaking havoc in the main base of Seither.
Yeah, a little bit of a pseudo mineral, little bit of a pseudo worker trait coming on here. Seither loses 10 SCVs. RiSky doesn't lose as many of his drones, but he does lose a lot of his ling buffer from earlier on.
But the mutas are finding even more value here. Not just 10 workers, he's going to get one of those medevacs. He's going to get a tank as well. Could even get another, and the double drop is forced all the way back. There's no pressure across the map for RiSky.
Yeah, and on top of all of that, RiSky is forcing Seither to keep a lot of his army at home. Look at how overstimmed these Marines are, just because they've been trying to chase these Mutalisks between the bases. Yeah, RiSky is free to do whatever he wants on his side of the map.
Exactly, and RiSky may have lost a couple of mutas, but actually he only lost one. He lost one single muta throughout all of that, so well worth it for him. He's been able to drone up here, saturate his 4th base, work on a 5th base, work on his creep spread, get his upgrades going. There was a period where he was vulnerable before he had banelings and before he had link speed, but that period is now over.
Yeah, he's even going to get baneling speed on top of that, just getting every single one of his upgrades, including +2 melee.
Oh, let's go! I like to think RiSky's DMs blew up after that game. They're like, mate, get your upgrades!
He's like, alright, I'll get all of them. I'll get flyer upgrades even.
Every upgrade, puppy. Every upgrade. There we go. Let's go. +2 melee. What about +2 armor there? What about carapace? But again, he doesn't even need it right now. You know, the mutas are again just dealing even more damage, putting Seither further and further behind. Seither just struggling to keep up here, and RiSky is soon going to be max. And there it is. Two Evos working at the same time. Oh, you love to see it.
Love to see it. Oh. Is there ever a more beautiful sight? Not right now, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
RiSky now positioning out from the mutas, starting to get more of a Ling Bane army, which makes sense. He is getting 2-2.
He is working on 2-2. We do see that Seither actually repositioning his army here on the left-hand side to protect his 3rd base. Gonna be exposing his natural a little bit here, but Seither, his position is not too bad. His army isn't looking too bad either. 2-2 on the horizon. I just worry that he's gonna be overwhelmed here, especially with RiSky with his economy.
That's definitely something to be said about Seither's position right now. He does have a very comparable army. And in fact, he's ahead in the army supply. I fear that he may be a bit lacking in tanks, and too many of them may just... Yeah, they may be a little bit too split apart right now. He's also got a ton of medevacs, which aren't really useful for him right now. it makes sense. Seither does love going for drops, but because he saw the medevacs earlier on, these medevacs are essentially dead supply for the time being.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing what they can to help out this bio army. Don't get us wrong, he's not going for any kind of mass drop play. We just see that Seither was trying to reposition a little bit on the edge of this cliff, but RiSky was wise to it. He was able to force him back, and let's not forget that that mute account is still up and running. Oh, there's a couple of Baneleys do connect with the bio. Oh.
Yeah, nice chunk of the bio army does get taken out.
Yeah, the mutas are left a little bit alone there on the right-hand side as well. A little bit careless from RiSky, so Seither is fighting back. He is now finally maxed out as well. He is solidifying his position. He is going to be working towards that fourth.
Well, he's going to try as RiSky collapses on top of just about half of the entire bioforce. He takes out most of the tanks as well, but has RiSky overextended. He has lost all of his Banelings and mostly just has Roaches and Ravagers left.
Yeah, exactly. Here we go. The counterattack is real for Seither. He forces a cancel here at the 6th base. We do see that Banelings are being morphed in. Seither doesn't want to risk it there. He doesn't want to push on forward. He doesn't want to gamble and try and hope that the Banelings do not finish morphing in when he pushes.
Yeah, he's waiting a little bit for his tanks to meet up. He's got 5 tanks, and that's plenty to deal with the Banelings. He's fighting off creep, and we have some decent splits here from Seither. The tanks are still standing, by the way. Only 2 of them got taken out, and most of the Marines stayed alive as well. Has Seither found his counterattack moment?
Yeah, I mean, this is the power of Waterfall. Once you start pushing, you can keep pushing, mate. You can keep the pressure on here, and RiSky is panicking a little bit. He's feeling that pressure. He's got a couple more Banelings morphing in, but the Ravagers are falling left and right. 2-2 is done for RiSky. So we are now even when it comes to those upgrades. 3-3 on the way, but still only just started. Not going to take place here in this fight.
Not at all. RiSky doesn't want to throw away any of his supply willy-nilly. He's just trying to consolidate his forces, as many of them as he can get. And he's just trying to open up some kind of attack path here, or some kind of defense path here would be more accurate. The last thing he wants to do is just attack into a single front. He wants to try to go for a surround, if possible.
It just goes to show that Roach Ravager is arguably wasted supply here. It does inflate RiSky. It did inflate him earlier, actually. We do see that ever closer. Seither is laying siege upon this base, and yeah, this hatchery is going to go down.
Yeah, but does it? It should eventually, but yeah, RiSky doing a pretty good job of just making sure his own Lings and Banes are where they need to be by the time Seither pushes in. I do worry for Seither, again, about these medevacs inflating his supply, but he's still ahead in the army supply. He still has a better army than RiSky, so it should be fine.
I think it's fine. I think the main reason for this, by the way, is that this time RiSky doesn't have any Hydras, and he lost all of his mutas, so he doesn't have any anti-air. So over time, the medevac count has gotten higher than it usually does. And here we go. Seither does take down that base, so he can keep on pushing. RiSky, recognizing this, is going for a bit of a run-by. He needs to force Seither to go back home.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if Seither really wants to go back home right now. He does load up a couple of medevacs. Maybe those can go home to try to defend that 3rd base. No, it seems to be a bit of a misclick, actually.
Yeah, it does just pick up a couple of those Marines. The Biles are going to connect here with some of the medevacs and even some of the Liberators as well. But I don't know if it's going to be enough here. Seither, he can just keep on pushing in. He's going to take down another hatchery.
Yeah, meanwhile, RiSky has re-established a base. Somewhere on the map, his Lings is still doing a ton of damage, cutting off the reinforcements of Seither. So there is still an opportunity for him, but I don't know, I'm just looking at all of these tanks and all of these Marines and all of these medevacs here for RiSky, and it's hard, or for Seither, sorry, and it's hard to really see him giving up this position anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, with this push, he took down 3 hatcheries. This is not bad at all, but his bases back at home are a little bit vulnerable. RiSky knows that it's going to take a while for him to get close to any other mining base. We have Ultras on the way. 3-3 is done, kind of splitting. Still not quite, and ooh, with this Ling run by, RiSky's going to force Seither on 2 bases.
I thought 2-2 was the most beautiful sight to witness, but 3-3 Ultras, that is a marvel. Yeah, Seither now down to about 30 workers.
Yeah, he's down to 30 workers. He doesn't really have any mining whatsoever back at home. He's forced all in right now. And again, a great way for RiSky to approach this kind of scenario, recognizing that he cannot take a fight. Oh, as more Marines go down.
Yeah, they were just kind of waddling into creep, and A little bit of miscontrol over there by Seither. Did it just walk straight into a bunch of Banelings? Here come the Ultralists, fully upgraded with 3-3 and kindness plating. RiSky collapsing on top of this entire army. A bunch of Lings coming in the back as well. GG is called. RiSky will take that very, very, very close series 2-1.